Okay. Meeting will come to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is a summary of an executive session from June 11, 2020. A property owner brought forth an allegation of misconduct against a director for allegedly violating policy 1.11, conflict of interest policy. The board voted 5-2 with directors Hover and Fosdick dissenting that the allegation of misconduct was without merit. A separate property owner brought forth an allegation of misconduct against former directors Hatcher and Abrahamson and current directors Brandenburg, Sinkus, Hover, Bidwell, and Barron Jr. The allegation of misconduct stated that by providing a summary of the member comments on May 28th that they had violated policy 1.10, Board of Directors Ethics. The board voted 5-3 with directors Brandenburg, Welchel, and Barron Jr. dissenting that the directors had violated policy 1.10, Board of Directors Ethics. The directors resolved to issue a public apology to the membership and to request the Rules and Regulations Committee review policy 1.07, section 5, make any recommendation changes to the board. The apology to the membership was subsequently issued on June 12th. Next item is the approval of the minutes, May 28th, 2020 Board of Directors regular meeting.
I move we approve the minutes from the May 28th regular Board of Directors meeting.
Second.
Motion from Mary, second from Jerry Barron. Any comments, questions? Jerry?
Just a question, I did not hear the motion.
The motion was to approve the minutes from the May 22nd meeting.
May 28th.
May 28th meeting. All in favor? All unanimous? Next item is June 18th, 2020, board work session meeting. Approve the minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
David Welchel, motions. Second.
Second.
Mary seconds. Any questions? All in favor? Unanimous. Next item is Joint Advisory Committee report summaries. Tom, you have that?
So normally we would have the chairperson or a designee for the committee to come in and give a report, but as a result of COVID and the restrictions, they've provided me with the summary for the Lakes Committee. They discussed the possibility of having a winter drawdown of Lake Rayburn. They're also possibly looking at drawing down over the winter Lake Ann, because last winter when the lake was drawn down, we had quite a bit of rain, and we were unable to keep the lake down for an extended period, and many property owners were unable to get the work done that they had wanted to do so. Those will all both be brought up at the next meeting. They also had a report from their subcommittee, which is working on the concept of regulating boat size, possibly engine size, or a combination of those two, because they want to make sure that some person doesn't, move in with a cigarette boat or something very large. So that's the Lakes Committee. Their next meeting is, I think, on July 8th. Next up, the Recreation Committee. They met on June 8th. Jessica McCrary was introduced. She's one of our new managers. She's a rec operations manager, and she's located in Reardon Hall. Each of the respective committee members gave their committee reports, and they found a couple minor maintenance issues which the maintenance team was asked to handle, but overall pretty good shape. They noted that the fitness centers, in spite of COVID, have been busy, tennis courts and so forth. New business at next month's meeting will be the election of the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary for the committee. So they just want to make sure that everybody was prepared for that heading their way. Regarding the next new member meet and greet, it's been postponed several times. The current date is September 12th. We'll see if that happens or not. Hard to say. Since that tends to be a group of about 50 or 60 people. So we'll see if we were able to have a group of that size at that time. And then the staff gave a report on usage and so forth, and activity cards. And a little bit later in the presentation, I have a slide regarding activity card sales. And their next meeting is on July 13th. The last committee meeting was the Golf JAC, and year-to-date rounds were at 49,043. This is up 2,929 rounds over prior year. I don't think it's been a very long time since I've said that year-to-date rounds are up over prior year, so that's very nice to be able to say that. Member rounds were up 2,542 over prior year, and non-member rounds were up 387. We talked extensively about the WAPT and the APT event, which is occurring as we speak. So the committee was discussing and getting ready for that. They also announced how the Birksdale Bridge was successfully removed and that project is completed. We're still working on the Scottsdale Bridge, and we hope to get that fixed in a reasonable amount of time. And their next meeting is on July 8th at 4:30. Any questions regarding the committee meetings? There you go.
Okay, the next item is financial reports. Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a little bit of general information first before we get into the financial reports. I just want to comment that the staff continues to follow the directives that have been put out by the state, the Department of Health. I receive many emails from property owners. Some want us to be more restrictive, others want us to be less restrictive. What we've been telling them is we're following the directives. That's what we're doing. And now that COVID is starting to hit close to home, just found out today that one of our regular golfers tested positive, so it's definitely hitting close to home. We need to, I reminded my staff at our staff meeting today that we need to continue to stay diligent, that we have to be careful and do our part. I want to remind property owners, if they have not seen the post in the newsletter, that if for the open board position, if they are interested in serving, it would be a one-year term, a little bit less than 1 year. It would go through May 31st of 21. If they are interested, they have to submit their resume to Tammy Lloyd, our corporate secretary. The deadline for submission of that resume is June 30th, close of business. Interviews will take place on July 7th in the afternoon. Once Tammy has all of the resumes in and knows how many people are going to be interviewing, she'll be able to arrange that, and she'll do her best to accommodate each person's individual schedule. But if you're interested in running for the board, we really encourage you to set aside that time on the afternoon of July 7th. You can do the interview via Zoom. And then if the board comes to a consensus, then they would presumably vote to confirm that individual on July 23rd. Here's the financial reports, year-to-date, month ending May. We're going to start with the POA first, and I always want to remind people that if you would like to look at the full financials, they're available on our website. For gross profit, you'll see that we're actually short of budget by $396,000. On a positive point, boat income is up by 54, assessments are up by 41, but recreation is down by 43 because of COVID. Golf is down by 129, some weather, but mainly COVID, and other such as refunds and so forth, we're down by 132 compared to budget. Compared to prior year, we're down by $967,000. But I want to remind everybody that last year, early in the year in 2019, we had the cell tower lease sale, which brought in $1,097,000. So if you eliminate that, you'll see that we're much closer to prior year. On the expense side, the team has done an outstanding job of reacting to the COVID crisis. Salaries are down by 301. Maintenance and repairs down by 199,000, and that's over all the departments. Employee benefits, health insurance, payroll taxes. You know, when you have less wages, you're going to have less taxes. So that's down by 99,000. Supplies are down by 78,000, and equipment and tools down by 71,000. But I also like to throw out that these are good numbers, but also not necessarily good numbers, because a lot of these are maintenance things that we're putting off, and I do believe in the pay me now or pay me more later. So when we put off things, that isn't necessarily a good thing. But we have clearly reacted to the situation, and I'm very pleased with the team for doing that. So year to date right now, we're to the positive by $549,000. And compared to prior year, if you were to take out the sale of the cell tower, you'll see that we're actually doing pretty good compared to prior year also. You know, regarding COVID, we're not out of the woods yet. So, you know, don't take that money to the bank. We don't know what the next couple of months have in store for us. On the water side, with so many people home and so much new construction, you'll see that the water usage is up by $382,000 compared to budget, and new connections for new home starts are up by $166,000, so that's fantastic. Expenses are over. You'd expect to see that. When you bring in more revenue, you tend to have more in expenses. For example, the supplies. We have more water meters than expected because we have more connections. So you have more on revenue, but you have more on the related expense. And you'll see that our EBITDA compared to budget is better by $462,000. So you combine that with the POA, then we're actually better than budget through the year, through this portion of the year, by $1 million. So that's outstanding. But, and the big but is, what do the coming months hold for us? Wanted to pull together some quick stats for some people. You'll see that here's our activity card sales for 18, 19, and 20. You'll notice that this is year-to-date through the end of June, except for 2020, it's through the 22nd. So there's a couple more days, and these are the days, the weeks before the 4th of July are some of the busiest we have. So I expect to see those numbers go up a little bit more, but you see at this point, our activity card sales compared to photo IDs, but we're up by 2,154. That's a 30% increase over prior year. Guest cards are up by 407. That's a 17% increase. And boat registration is up by 583. That's a 12% increase. So all very healthy. I think some of that is COVID related, especially boats. You know, it's a great outdoor activity that is, you know, by and large separated from other people. So that may be the 2020 plan, maybe COVID, maybe a combination of the two. It's really hard to say, but all very positive numbers. Any questions? That's it.
The next item in the agenda, you will find last month's open forum comments and questions, which brings us to the open forum for this meeting. The first member to speak, Joy Sawyer.
And for those viewing at home, we're allowing one person in at a time. So they're coming from the Welcome Center. So it may take a moment or two when David calls the next person up.
Hello. It's good to be back and seeing you guys face to face for a change. That's good. I had just one kind of question, I guess. Several people have asked, and I don't know the answer. So what is the difference between the Bella Vista POA and the Bella Vista Village POA?
Is that all, Joy?
Joy, at the
Well, I have a follow-up question if you...
after all the comments have been made, comments and/or questions have been made by the property owners, at the very end we address.
Okay, so I guess in the county records, there is a Bella Vista POA and a Bella Vista Village POA, and I believe it's the Village POA that owns almost 650 lots. I know you did a flash sale for the other one and got rid of like 600 lots after you decided you couldn't vote, you weren't going to vote them anymore. But there's a Bella Vista Village, I think it's the Village POA, that still, it's not the other one, that still owns over 600 lots. And the question that I've been asked is, are those votable lots? So in the county records, it's just two separate things. So we're just curious. About that. That's it.
Thank you.
So you don't know, or you're just not?
When all
Joy,
the comments are made, we will address
Okay.
questions.
Next is Beth Tracy.
Do I need to leave this on when I talk? I do? Okay. It's just hard for me. This is the first time I've actually spoken in front of the board, and I just wanted to also say I watched a little bit of the rules and regs before this, and I certainly appreciate all the effort and work that went into your discussion about the open forum. It was I thought it was great. My name's Beth Tracy. I live at Rannoch Drive. And I've attended a lot of the meetings, and if I'm not attending them, I'm watching them just because I'm interested, I think, in where I live and what's going on. And I have a comment that's totally mine, and I feel like from everything that I've been reading about this change of policy that's coming to be voted on tonight, the 3.07, that as a member, I shouldn't have to ask for the board to keep their promise about what happened with the 2020 plan. We were told in November, December, as this was revving up for the members' first 2020 plan, this is for cheaper rates, and some things are going to be free actually, and you get your privacy. And we were encouraged very strongly to vote for that assessment increase for these things. Then it was voted on and it passed, and members were skeptical, and they said, well, do we have to worry about things changing once this goes into effect? And we were told, no, it can't be changed. And one person on the board said, There's something that prevents that from happening. It's a legal binding contract with members. Once voted, it cannot be changed for 3 years. Please, members, consider that and understand it. It cannot be changed once voted in. So I just wanted to say that as a member, I really don't want to be here tonight asking for your promise to be kept. I want to be here saying, you won't believe how great the Rangers were on the lake last weekend. And in order to keep the many, many boats that are, obviously Tom told us about the number of boat registrations, we just can't have our private amenities open up for more boats. They can barely handle the boats that are on there now. So again, I don't like that I'm here saying tonight, I shouldn't be here tonight saying that, asking for you to keep your promise. Thanks.
Thank you. Next to speak, Steve McKee.
Steve McKee, Tyree Place. I'm going to have to move this if I can. There we go. As members know, I believe the accusations made against me as a board member were spurious and specious. As Ms. Hatcher said it, directors must uphold the standards and policies that are required of them. I was doing exactly that for the POA and its members, doing what I campaigned on and was elected for, members first. With policies 202, 303, and 304 coming to a second reading, I believe members can now understand a little bit about why I was really removed. As they are written, they fail. We were told that the 2020 plan document, not the FAQs, were legally binding. This language is all over Facebook, amongst other places. The deal was the members would pay more in assessments, and then this is what we would get. No new community center, no POA voting of its inventory lots, no fee changes until at least 2023, no additional trail maintenance costs. Non-members may only use golf, restaurants, Kingsdale Tennis, Blowing Springs, Tanyard, Metfield Skills Parks and Trails, called the Back 40, Little Sugar, and Metfield Connector, and no other amenities or facilities. Members and their guests only may use all of the above, plus lakes, parks, pools, beach, recreation facilities, gun range, and all the other trails. Non-members are not allowed at these amenities or facilities. Anyone without a member-sponsored guest card are not allowed. We were promised that the POA would not issue itself guest passes to get around this. But to use the rec centers and lakes requires a guest pass. Thus, public events are impossible. Moreover, the fee schedule shows only members and their guests. There's no pricing for the public at those amenities. For the POA visitors at those amenities. So you're also proposing to make fee changes in violation, and if not, the public is once again going to be able to use our amenities and facilities for less than what the members pay. I urge the board to fulfill its promises and rewrite the policies. I urge the board to put members first. And when you fail, I urge the membership to remember these things in the next election and vote in the candidates who are pro-integrity, pro-amenities, and pro-members first.
Thank you, Stephen. Next up is Chris Rose. Chris Rose.
Hello, my name is Chris Rose. I live on Barrow Lane. This isn't intended to be a rebuttal to the last speaker. I wouldn't be here tonight except for a post that I saw in an email earlier this week about an amenity that's important to me being open to the public, and referred me to the policy 3.04. And after reading 3.04, I felt that the comment was very misleading, and it prompted me to send an email to all of you as board members, and I wanted to follow up to that email. After reading through the policy and seeing the association guest and the participant guest sections and those activities or amenities that fall under those categories, I felt like the Rules and Regulations Committee did a fair job and a thorough job to identify those activities. My wife and I moved to Bella Vista about 13 months ago from Ohio. We've never lived in a community that has a POA, so we're new to all this. We chose Bella Vista because of a number of reasons, but one of the main things being the amenities that it has to offer. And those are important to me as a POA member. I think that it's also important that we consider ourselves as a community. And the public or the participant guest activities that were listed, and I appreciate the response that I got from a board member and from Mr. Judson to my emails. Especially the list of special events that would be scheduled in a non-COVID environment. I think they all make us part of the community. It brings people in who may not be totally familiar with the community. Those people come in and they'll add, they spend money here at the establishments, and I don't see that list as being oppressive to my use of amenities or activities that are here. The only comment that I had that I wish that could have been implemented, and I understand that at this late date, I'm late to the party with the second reading. I would like to have seen the association guest list be less open-ended and not say includes. To me, that brings up a bucket that has all these amenities in it. But to say that it includes also implies to me that there might be other things in that bucket. So there could be language, I think, that would be stronger, that would specifically say and leave no doubt, these are the amenities that we are going to fall into that category. Thank you.
Thank you. The last member signed up to speak, Tommy Freitag.
I am one of the 23 members that had their First Amendment rights violated by the previous board last month. The board's decision to remove Mr. McKee from the board was flawed, at least. The board never gave the membership any solid, concrete reasons why Director McKee violated was so terrible to remove him, other than quoting policy numbers. 3 board members' terms were up and should not have been allowed to vote. The director that filed the complaint against Director McKee should not have been allowed to vote. Director McKee was not allowed a vote. Therefore, only the remaining 4 directors should have been allowed to vote. 2 voted to remove him, and 2 voted not to, leaving a tie. This decision should have been left to the new board in June 2020. In researching POA condominium associations and POA board policies online, many have their policies that board members can only be removed by votes of the membership, and only then if a board member commits some serious criminal crime, such as convicted of a felony, charged with a felony of theft of association funds, or embezzlement. I would suggest that those of you on the Rules and Regulation Committee change Bullet 6 under disciplinary procedures for directors to state a like statement. I can assure you that the membership would concur the same. Oh, by the way, if the board would like to gain some credibility, vote to reappoint Mr. McKee to our membership board. Then we can go back liking each other. Regarding policy 3.04, item 1, guest. I am against participating guests. Only those approved in the past. Any new participant guest should be and needs to be approved by the membership.
Thank you, Tommy. Are there any other members outside who wish to come in and speak at this time?
Hello.
Your
My
name
name's
and
Miss-
street, please.
Oh, sorry. My name's Missy Hyatt. I live on Upavon Lane. My family and I moved here this spring, and so I'm excited to become more involved in the board as kind of a younger or less mature person of the population. I'm excited to be involved and be more familiar with things that are going on in my community. I have two things. Stepping into it, I have concerns that we had a previous director that had allegations made against him, and he was let go. And then very quickly after, we had another director had allegations made against him, and there was a vote. But then I'm concerned that there was a request to review those policies. It just seems unethical from my point of view to let one board member go, and then as soon as another board member has allegations, they want to have a review of said policy and change it. So that's from my point of view. And then the other thing I want to speak about is the 3.04. I just have a question. What is the benefit to me as a community member to allow participant guests? I'm still undecided on how I feel about it, but I want to know, as a member of this community who pays their dues, what is the benefit to me to let participant guests in? So that is the question I have to the board. What benefit do I have, a paying member who pays good money for good amenities, to let these people in with these events? The kayak demo day, is it a stream of revenue? What is it? What do I gain from those activities? So those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we have some emails that were sent in and will be read. First one from Stacie Berger. I'm going out on a limb and assume that regarding the removal of Director McKee, this was the first time in our POA's history that another director filed a complaint against a fellow director. Obviously, some members of the board are not aware of the legal definition of personal gain. It's a benefit or advantage that relates to a particular person. I think it's safe to say that any particular director who filed the allegations against McKee stood to reap a benefit or an advantage by having Steve removed. Anyone who has been attentive to the last year of meetings would agree. I think Mr. Barron in particular wanted McKee removed so he could be a member of on the Rules and Regs Committee. I stand by my allegations that there was conflict of interest, and Director Barron, who filed the allegations against McKee, should have recused himself according to our governing documents. Also, if you look at the Board Ethics Policy 9, it specifically states that directors should avoid all conflict of interest. It has been suggested that I recommend the Rules and Regulations Committee look into the policy pertaining to conflict of interest and change it so that if this instance occurs again, it would be handled differently. I guess if it's necessary, then I would suggest that. However, I think the policies are pretty cut and dry. I think the main problem is that they're being used, abused, and enforced only on certain occasions. The proof in this accusation will come in the near future when we see how many more board members will be given the opportunity to simply apologize for their misconduct. As for Policy 3.04, apparently Doug couldn't find a workaround, so the board will be voting on that issue tonight. I often wonder if Doug gets sick of being asked to work around and interpret the governing documents in a way that suits the board and management, rather than a way that protects members in the long run. Thank you for your time. Tom, do you want the response now? Second is from Mary Stewart. Dear fellow property owners and POA Board of Directors, due to the pandemic, I do not feel comfortable coming to the membership meeting this evening and hope you will read my letter in its entirety, as is my right to be heard, and not summarized as I was at the last meeting. My first point concerns the work session meeting of June 18. What was brought forward by several other members, I was appalled at the behavior of Director Brandenburg. His treatment of Mr. Hover around the 35-minute mark borders on verbal elder abuse. As I brought up in my previous unread letter, David has been unprofessional and less than respectful to property owners. Sit down and shut up. And now board members. He should step down immediately and be replaced by a property owner that can show respect and represent members as is the duty of the board. The same allegations against Director Welchel should also be addressed concerning rude behavior toward members. My second concern is that Policy 2.02, the vague wording of certain guests, and the inclusion of association guests and participant guests. The association committee is required to sponsor the event, and then the sponsor is required to assign the agreement. So all events fall on the POA as responsible parties for an event. It also states that the COO can waive all amenity fees for any event or events that he chooses. At the minimum, these should be POA board decisions, not COO or committee decisions. My third concern is directed at the sitting board concerning Policy 3.04. Before you vote, think about this. 1, we were promised in the 2020 plan that was supported by the board that lakes, pools, beach, fitness centers, and gun range would be for members and guests of members only, not association guests nor participant guests. We were also promised that this plan was legally binding and would not change. That was your promise. So, do you stand by your word? 2, many special events were brought up during the work session. One was the high school golf team. This will not be affected as it's golf. It's not one of the listed amenities that you promised us. Same with several other events. If the fishing tourney has to be stopped because you uphold your promise to the members, then make a donation to the group equal to the money that would have been raised. The Cancer Challenge is another example. You are still able to host the majority of the events, including the golf tournament, the tennis tournament, and run along with various lunches and dinners. If you can't do a shooting challenge, then donate the money that would have been raised through our charitable contribution committee. I could not find any information on either of these activities in terms of what that amount would be, as reports like that are unavailable. You should look into that before you just vote yes on changes to a policy that will give committees, not elected board members, the right to approve an event. The next email is from Elaine Rosen Murphy. I am against the proposed changes to Policy 3.04 because although Mr. Judson has stated via email to another member that the goal of the changes are to provide flexibility for non-members to access special events. In actuality, it grants 1 year of access to many of the amenities the 2020 plan returned to private status, a workaround Mr. Judson referred in a March meeting. If the actual intent of the change to policy is to allow non-members to use amenities strictly for special events, the access would be granted for the time period of the event, not for 1 full year following the event. As currently proposed, if a 2 to 3 day charity event is planned, for example, skeet shooting or a fishing tournament, the non-member guest of the association does not expire after the 2 to 3 days of the event, but rather it does not expire for 365 days. Although the proposed language may be legal, in my opinion, it violates the spirit of the 2020 plan, which included limiting non-member access to amenities. Please vote against this policy change and demonstrate to the membership that the new board wants to reunite the Bella Vista community that Mr. Judson and our previous board intentionally divided with their actions last year by approving an assessment vote days after the previous vote failed, a plan Mr. Judson noted in public would divide the community, and by the vote to remove Steve McKee from the board days prior to the seating of the new board. The fourth email is from Natalie Roller. Board members, I can see from tonight's agenda that some board members are not held to the same standard of rules of conduct as others. Director McKee allegedly violated a policy. I say allegedly because no proof or evidence was ever relayed to the membership for which he was removed. There are now new complaints that current directors have violated the same policies as Mr. McKee. Not only are the current directors getting away with a mere apology, they got to actually vote on their own behalf. If that doesn't speak to the lack of integrity on this board, I don't know what does. Now, since Mr. McKee's pesky dissenting votes are no longer a problem, another item on this agenda is to allow non-member access to the amenities that we were just promised were going to be members only. Plus, the city has put out their 2040 plan, which puts us back on track to be a destination city. They highlight the challenges for their plan, which mostly include our so-called private amenities. I expect you all to truly represent the membership and vote against any of this. Also, either reinstate Mr. McKee or remove Mr. Brandenburg. After all, it's only fair, right? The answers regarding the comments from Ms. Berger. The allegation of misconduct due to conflict of interest was found to be without merit by a vote of 5-2. Regarding the comments from Ms. Stewart, it is the job of the board chair to keep the meeting focused and not allow the meeting to bog down. It is unreasonable to state the conduct at the work session was elder abuse. Regarding the proposed changes to Policy 3.04, I wish to reiterate that back in September 2019, an example was provided to the membership on the POA's website in the question and answer section. The intent of providing this example was to communicate that there would need to be some level of flexibility required in our policies. Regarding the comments from Ms. Rosen Murphy, the statement that access would be granted for the special events for 365 days is incorrect. The access would be limited to the days or day of the event. The workaround quote that is attributed to Mr. Judson was not made by Mr. Judson. I encourage our community to watch the video of the entire meeting, not just a short clip. If you watch the entire meeting, you will get a much clearer understanding of what actually took place. Regarding the comments from Mr. Roller, I encourage you to review the summaries of the executive session held on May 14th and the executive session held on June 11th. You will find in reading these summaries that the allegations are markedly different. Comparing them is invalid. The POA has no control over the 2040 plan which the city is developing. I encourage you to share your concerns directly with the city. Tom?
Okay, regarding the comments that were made here live today, if you want to call it live, The question regarding the 650 lots, let me speak clearly. These lots are not owned by the POA. If you would like to send us that information, I think that once we get this information, we can show that the title is, I was not there. I haven't seen what it is. It's not owned by the POA. So I'm sure that we can demonstrate that it is owned by some other entity unrelated to the POA. Regarding the comments on 3.04, the board is going to discuss that later on in the meeting. I would like to point out a couple things. David just referenced back in September of last year, comments were included on the Q&A to add clarity that some level of flexibility in our policies would be needed. So we had anticipated that there would be some level of flexibility, but not an excessive amount. I would like to point out, if you look at our lake rangers between January 1 of last year and June 15th, a little over 400 non-members were removed from our amenities. So far this year, in that same time frame, January 1 through June 15th, we have removed 2,500. So it's gone from 400 to 2,500. So you can see that our lake rangers are much more aggressive in removing non-members. Regarding the comments regarding the removal of Mr. McKee, I think it would be not something that I should comment on, other than I encourage you to read the summary of the executive session. Regarding the comments on misleading information on Facebook, that can be very frustrating. I met with an individual earlier this week and commented that of the posts that I see, less than half of them are accurate. I encourage people to send in information, send in questions to the board, to management. We'll answer those questions as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, too often is not information that is provided on Facebook is not factual, or they're taking a little piece of information that is factual and then throwing in other information that is not, which is really unfortunate. Send us an email, give us a call, set up a meeting. Like I said, I had an hour-and-a-half meeting earlier this week with a property owner that had some concerns and questions. Regarding the comment about the summary that was provided by regarding the 23 property owners that submitted an email, the board, as referenced earlier in the meeting, did submit an apology. And earlier at 4:30 today, the Rules and Regulations Committee met, and they went over portions or modifications to policy 1.07, which I think the Rules and Regulations Committee feels will ensure that such an action doesn't occur again. Also, there was a comment against 3.04 on that one, but I feel to a certain extent I've addressed that. Regarding the question how it benefits you, I would say that we are a community. Many of I have a memo that we're going to go over a little bit later on in this meeting, and you'll see that the majority of the events are charitable events, such as the Cancer Challenge, the BV Animal Shelter. It's to help the police department with their annual night out and for their weapons qualifying, the high school team, the swim team, the kids fishing derby. All those things I think are great community and community building type events. So we'll go over those in much more detail later on, but that's the summary that I had.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you to all the members who take the time to come here and speak this evening or send in emails. Next item on the agenda is voting for President, Vice.
As far as responding to members, there was one thing I feel that we forgot. Mr. McKee made a point that we are going to look at fee changes. I want to make it very clear that this board has not been discussing fee changes. in any way.
No.
That fee schedule is 100% solid. We are not even considering changing fees right now.
That is correct.
Okay.
There are no fee changes in the works. Okay, the next item is the officer positions as required by Article 7 of our bylaws.
Do you mind if I jump in, David?
Go right ahead, Tom.
Okay, so this is item 10 on your list. Each year, we're required by state law and by our bylaws, Article 7, to name a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer. Since the work session, we recognized that we didn't have the assistant secretary listed, so that's a difference compared to last week. Roxy has been a fill-in. I don't know. Tammy's been pretty good about making sure she makes every meeting, but you never know. People get sick. So we would recommend that the board approve these positions. Now recognize that most of us do not go by these titles, but they are required by the state. When I sign a contract, it is as the president, not as the COO.
Okay, can I have a motion to that effect? There's a suggested motion.
I make a motion to appoint Tom Judson as president, Doug McCash as vice president, Tammy Lloyd as secretary, Roxy, I do not know how to say her last name. Gones as assistant secretary, and Dwayne Mitchell as treasurer.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
Mary has seconded. Is there any further discussion?
I have a comment on this. I feel that being a new director, that it's difficult on me to know these people well enough that I feel like I can vote at this point in time. And I recommend that the Rules and Regulation Committee review this Article 7 of the bylaws and look at maybe changing the time to vote on these to January, which corresponds with the corporate year.
That's something that I think could be considered. Are there any other comments? I'll call for a vote at this time. All in favor of the motion as stated to appoint these people to the positions, say aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Any opposed? Jerry, Hover? Abstain?
I'm abstaining until I get a chance to see them do their jobs.
Are you abstaining or?
Yes.
Okay, one abstention. Thank you, Sandy. Let's see.
Okay, the next one up.
Next item is,
Do you mind if I cover it?
go right ahead.
I got it right behind you. I got all the last ones on the.
Okay,
Okay, so we have committee nominations. The first one is for the Charitable Giving Committee. And the Charitable Giving Committee is, this was a committee that was formed 3 years ago. And each year we get a large number of requests from property owners and from area charities that would like the POA to donate money. Usually, it's always money. Or they want us to donate, free food at the restaurants and so forth. And what this committee does is each year, for the last 3 years, we've had $25,000 set aside for local charitable giving. They must be local, meaning, Cancer Challenge is wonderful but they're more national. The Heart Association is wonderful, but they're more national. This is, for example, charities that have been assisted in the past have been the BV Animal Shelter, the Boys and Girls Club, which is located up by the crossings, the van, courtesy van, those types of things. So now in 18 was the first year, 25,000 was given out. I think we gave it out to 5 different organizations, all local. In 19, that was canceled because we had to conserve funds because of the fire. And then in 20, it was included in the budget, and it was notated in the budget documentation that we had $25,000. So what they do is the committee looks at all of the grant requests all at one time. So Tammy put out, our corporate secretary, put out a notice on the newsletter asking for charities to submit an application for a grant, and then the committee comes together and evaluates all of those requests and makes a recommendation, and that recommendation is then given to the board, and the board ultimately has the authority to approve or reject the recommendations of the Charitable Giving Committee. The Charitable Giving Committee is one of the few committees that has no board liaisons on it. And the reason is because we don't want any board member for there to be a perception that a board member unduly influenced the recommendation of the Charitable Giving Committee. So that's the structure. It is in our governing documents. If you go through our governing documents, you can get a little bit more detail regarding the Charitable Giving Committee. So we've been in existence, this committee's been in existence for 3 years. So what we're looking for is a renewal of Tom and Bob for 3-year terms, and a renewal for 2 years, so we have some staggering of Tony and John for 2-year terms. And like I said, they did not meet at all last year. The first year that they did it, they in total they probably met 4 or 5 times, and then that's it. And then they wait till the next year. But they did a very good job. They interviewed the grant requesters and got detailed information from them. They wanted to make sure that the money was going to be well spent. Any questions?
Tom, one clarification on the agenda. It says both of them will have 3-year terms. Just to clarify that Tony and John will be 2-year terms.
Correct. I apologize.
Okay, Doug, do we need a motion for each one separately, or can they all be grouped?
We need them separately.
Yeah.
Okay, so I need a motion to choose Tom for a second 3-year term.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Jerry Barron Jr. Makes a motion. David Welch will second. Is there any discussion? I call for a vote. All in favor of Tom for a 3-year term? Opposed? 1 abstention. Is there a motion for Bob Rissel for a second 3-year term?
So moved.
Mary?
A second.
Jerry Barron, a second. Any discussion? All in favor of Bob? Any opposed? Abstention? 1 abstention. Is there a motion for Tony for a second 2-year term?
So moved.
Tia? Tia makes a motion.
Second.
David seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? 1 abstention. John Rice for a second 2-year term. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Mary?
Second.
Tia seconds. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? 1 abstention. Okay, moving on to the next item. Nomination from the Joint Advisory Committee.
The next one is for the rec committee,
Recreation.
and then after that is from the golf committee. And these are all recommendations.
Okay, the recommendation we have from the Recreation Joint Advisory Committee is Scott Dries for a first 3-year term. Do I have a nomination? Or
So moved.
a motion?
So moved.
Jerry Barron, Mary seconds. Any discussion on this one? We've all seen the resume. All in favor? Any opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. For the Golf Joint Advisory Committee, they have made the following nomination of David DeGraff for a 3-year term. Is there a motion to choose him?
I make a motion.
Jan?
Second.
David Welch will second. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? One abstention. Okay.
The next up is item 13 on your agenda, Policy 2.05, the regulation of common property hunting. The primary change here is the elimination of hunting on Arkmo, since the POA no longer owns this land.
Pretty straightforward. This is the second of 2 required readings. The policy will be changed if it's approved tonight. I have a motion to approve. Jerry Barron?
Yeah, make a motion to approve the amended change for policy 2.05 with this being the second reading.
Is there a second?
Second.
Tia seconds. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the vote then. Those in favor of approving the amended change, raise your hand. It's unanimous. Next one is Bylaws, Article 6. That has to do with proxies.
Being submitted digitally,
Yes.
just making clear on how a board member that will be absent, how they can still submit their proxy.
Trying to keep up with the electronic age.
Absolutely.
Okay. Is there a motion on Article 6?
I move to approve the changes to bylaws, Article 6, as recommended by the Rules and Regulations Committee, with this being the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Jerry Barron. Any further discussion? All those in favor? It's unanimous. Next is Bylaws, Article 11.
So what this one does is it stipulates, so property owners can submit their ballot, their proxy, 3 different ways. They can vote electronically, they can vote by paper that they mail in, or they can walk in their ballot. Now what we're trying to do is add clarity and uniformity, because what happens at times is people will try and walk in their ballot moments before a meeting, but recognize that it takes us, with the inspectors of election, it can take up to a half an hour from that ballot to be submitted to being tabulated, verified, and everything recalculated. So we've had a couple instances over the last few years where last-minute ballots have resulted in a delay in the start of the meeting. So by saying, okay, you have to turn, we encourage you to vote, but we ask that you submit your ballot proxy 30 minutes prior to the start of the meeting. This gives us organizational time to make sure that we can start the meeting on time. And to put things in perspective, even in our largest elections, for the most recent increase in the assessments, we had 5 people walk in their ballot. For the most recent board election, we had nobody walk in their ballot. So it's important that we have our policies appropriately written, but it's not the biggest issue. And it's a minuscule number of votes, but we just want to make sure we get those in on time.
Okay, I'd entertain a motion to change Article 11. David?
I'll make a motion to approve the changes to bylaws Article 11 as recommended by the Rules and Regulations Committee, with this being the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Jan? Any further discussion? I'll call for the vote then. All in favor of the change? It's unanimous. Next one, policy 2.02.
So if you watch the work session, you'll see I'm going to repeat a lot of the things, but this is the reservation of amenities and fee policy, and lists the amenities that can be used for the association guests, and it's limited to the restaurants, golf, tennis, Metfield Skills Park, Tanyard Creek, Blowing Springs, and other paved and unpaved trails open to the general public. It also stipulates that amenity use fees will be charged in certain instances, stipulates that members get priority over guests. And what I encourage people to do is view policy 2.02 and 3.04. They kind of go hand in hand. They add clarity to each other. They make references to each other, specifically when it has to do with association guests.
Okay, I would entertain a motion on policy 2.02.
I'll make a motion to approve the changes to policy 202 as recommended by the Rules and Regulation Committee, with this being the second reading of required readings two.
Thank you.
Second.
David Welchel seconds. Any further discussion? Sandy?
I would just like to say, as I did at the work session, that I'm still opposed to changing the word facility to amenities. I don't believe that we rent out an amenity, we rent out a facility. And if an entire amenity is rented out, then it's to the detriment of the other members that cannot use the amenity while it's being rented out.
Any other comments?
Have we ever had that happen before?
Not to my knowledge.
When you go through the special events, you'll see that we try and make sure that such things occur on days that, like maybe the gun range is closed, like the ATA events, those shoots. Those happen about 8 times a year. They're held on a Sunday, and the skeet and trap range is closed on a Sunday. So we do our best to make sure that we take care of our membership. With that being said, when you talk about association guests in the golf course, we have an example of today. We have the APT tournament, and so if a member wanted to play the country club, they wouldn't be able to. But we try and give the membership lots of advance notice so that they're aware that that would happen, so that they can play golf at another golf course in the community.
Okay, anything else?
I'm going to go through this after, when I go through 3.04.
Okay, we vote then on 202. All those in favor of the changes? All opposed? Jerry Hober, Sandy Fostick opposed. Policy 3.03.
The main change here is for dependent card holders. We're looking to limit the number of guests to 5. Now, this is not for the primary. So if you are an adult and you have an activity card, there would be no limitation. But for the dependent, it would limit it to 5. This was a recommendation from the Lakes Committee from well over a year ago. And what it's trying to address is during the summer months, often at some of the dams, we will have large groups of kids enjoying the lake, and there will be one child, one dependent that has a card, and currently there is no limitation. So we'll have a large group causing some ruckus, and the lake ranger will go down there, and the dependent card holder will go, all 30 of these people are all my friends, and they're all with me. And they may not even know everybody. This will limit that So we're trying to respond to some of the concerns that we've heard from our lakefront owners and from people that are trying to go down there and fish and find a large groups. It's going to give our lake rangers a lot more, control, muscle, if you want to, muscle's probably the wrong word, but a lot more ability to control some of the challenging situations. When the Lakes Committee formed this recommendation, they actually looked at it over several months, and we had lake rangers come in to submit input and allow the Lakes Committee to ask them questions, and that's how the recommendation was derived.
Any, Tia?
Just one point of information, this does not restrict that if a parent or adult wants to have their kids go and have more than 5,
No.
they are still welcome to do that.
That is correct.
If we have a parent they can have a family reunion and get 50 guest passes and go to the park. They can do that.
We're not restricting the primaries at all, just dependents. Okay, all in favor of that change?
You need a motion first.
We don't have a motion yet?
No, motion.
Oh, my gosh.
A lot of discussion.
Who wants to make that motion? David?
I make a motion to approve the changes to policy 303 as recommended by the Rules and Regulation Committee, with this being the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Jerry Barron, second. Now, is there any other discussion? Okay.
Ditto.
Yeah. All those in favor? Oh, excuse me, Jerry.
Just a question. This came up at least a year ago, and at that point in time, it was felt as though it wasn't necessary. What has happened this spring with the groups and so on? My question is it necessary to do this?
Unfortunately, we still have challenges. We're still getting reports. The lake rangers are having to spend too much time trying to handle these situations at the dams. We're getting complaints from lakefront property owners that live close to the dams about loud music and so forth. So our lake rangers came forward and said, look, we've talked about this, and so management felt that it was best that we ask the board, ask the Rules and Regulations Committee to make this modification because we need to have that muscle behind us so we can enforce these challenging situations. If it's a situation where everybody's quiet and not and respectful, then they're probably not going to push too hard on this issue, but it gives them that authority when they need it.
I wouldn't say that. Just to clarify, if it goes into our policy and we pass this, they should enforce it, no matter what. But I think the thing that needs to be clarified is they probably won't notice if they're not causing a ruckus, and if it's a bunch of 18-year-olds, the lake ranger might not know.
Well,
I would agree with that. That's a better way of phrasing it.
Yeah, it's probably like many of the complaints, that they're reported by members that there's a problem. And we do rely on the members to let us know if something's wrong. People on the lakes need to keep the phone number for the lake rangers handy so that they can respond quickly and take care of problems if they arise. So, okay, we're ready to vote then. All those in favor of the change, please raise your hand. It is unanimous. That brings us to policy 3.04.
So 3.04 adds further clarity and creates categories for guests. So sponsored guests, which would be guests of members. Association guests would be guests of the POA with limitations imposed by policy 2.02. Reciprocal guests, which would be guests of Cooper, and this is required in our governing documents, and participant guests with special permission for certain events. So at that point, I'm going to talk about the memo that I put together. At last week's meeting, Director Fosdick asked, okay, so how many events are we talking about? So let's go through this. So 2020 is such an odd year because of COVID. I think we're better to jump forward to 21. So let's imagine we're in January of 21 and COVID's 100% behind us, hopefully. And at that time, we would need to go to the respective committees, usually it's the Lakes or the Recreation Committee, and talk to them and seek permission for each of these events. So there's a total of 16 events. So I've categorized them: charitable events, the Cancer Challenge Trap Shoot, the BV Animal Shelter, the Calling All Paws for this Dog Days of Summer event, the BV Animal Shelter Wiener Take All event. So all those are charitable events. Then we have community events. We have the BV Police Department Annual Night Out, the BV Police Department Weapons Qualifying, the Kids Fishing Tournament, the FBF Kayak Fishing Tournament, the ATA Trap Shoots, the Youth ATA Trap Shoots, the Youth Hunter Education Challenge, the High School Trap Shooting Event, the Summer Swim Team, and then POA sponsored events. For example, or not for example, specifically, the Spring and Christmas Bazaars that are held at Reardon Hall, the Marty Haggard concert at Reardon Hall, the paddleboard kids camps, and the kayak demo day, which was just the 2021 was just canceled. In summary, of these 16 events, 10 of them would likely not occur if non-members were not allowed to participate, if it was members only. Also, of the 16 events, 5 of them take place on days when the facility is normally closed. I referenced the ATA. They shoot on, they traditionally have shot on Sundays, which is when the trap and skeet rangers are closed, or the high school team, where the summer swim team, where they swim prior to the pool opening. So what we've tried to do in the past is address these and make sure that they occur where there's the least disruption at all, as much as possible for our property owners. Any questions?
I have a couple. I really thank you for this list. We just asked for it in the last meeting and you pulled it together so quickly. There was one that you sent out in an email that had an update for 2020. Can we share that with the members? Can we put that online with just the updates of what's been canceled?
We can share both. The 2020 is just, we've canceled so many events. And what I didn't want to do was, if an event has been canceled, I didn't want to come to this meeting and say, well, instead of 16 events, there'd be only 12 in 2020. And I didn't want to be deceptive. So that's why I kind of jumped forward to 21, and just because if an event is canceled because of COVID, I wanted to make sure I included everything.
This probably might be the dumbest question I've ever asked. If it's already there, don't shoot me. Do we have a community calendar on our website that lists all of these events?
Yeah.
Okay.
Say again, Tia.
Was there a community calendar on our website that lists these events? Okay. I just haven't seen it. That's why I figured it's probably there.
You might also, you would want to make sure you subscribe to all the different newsletters, the fishing events, the gun range events, and so forth, to make sure you get an update on these different events. Because not all of them are in the general. Many of the lakes-oriented events may only appear in the lakes update. The rec ones may only appear in the rec updates. But there are some big ones like the spring and Christmas bazaars. Those are usually covered in all of the newsletter updates. And in your water bill. Many of these are covered in the water bill. Yes, Jan?
Are any of these primarily attended by members and their sponsored guests?
So some of them, let me kind of go down the list. I would say the Cancer Challenge is probably, and I'm shooting from the hip, so please forgive me if I get anything wrong, but I would say the Cancer Challenge is probably 75% non-member, 25% member. I'd say the animal shelter events are probably 80 to 90% member. The police, some of the police department do not live in Bella Vista. And remember, the police department covers all of Bella Vista, even the portions that are outside of the POA. The fishing derby, that is one that since we received the fish from the state, if it wasn't open to everybody, we can't have the event. I would say that 90% of those are property owners. The KFB event is probably 80% non-member. And that's one of the events, and there's a rec committee member that probably will throw stuff at me. That's an event that may not return because I think we're going to struggle to justify that one. But we've had it in the past, it's on the list. The ATA shoots, probably 60% members, and then when you throw in guests, it probably gets up to maybe 80%. The youth ones, I would say the same. The youth hunter education, I don't know enough. I'd say maybe 50-50 on that one. The high school trap, maybe 40% are members, because that's actually I think it's a state championship or something like that. So maybe even less than 40%. The swim team could have it where it's members only, but they express concern that their competitiveness would go down, which is important to them. The spring and Christmas bazaars, that's a hard one. I'd say probably 80% membership. The Marty Haggard, they advertise quite a bit on that one, so I'd say probably 60 to 70% of that is members. The paddle board, I would probably say 60% of that is property owners. Hard to say. On the paddle boards, we get so many of the kids that are actually grandkids, and we don't necessarily even know that they're grandkids of a property owner. And the kayak demo day, that's probably 90%. And that's, if you look at our statistics on the number of kayaks that are being registered in our community, which has been just going up by leaps and bounds every year, I think this demo day is really is part of the reason, is what's driving it, is because more and more people are getting exposed to kayaks and so forth. Did that answer your question?
Yes, and it sounds like the vast majority of these are member or sponsored guests that will be attending, and very few outside participant guests.
If we were every once in a while I get contacted by someone that wants to use one of our amenities, and we have to tell them no. They're a non-member and so forth. So we feel that, in management's opinion, these events have already been vetted. I've pulled out the one that I think has the big question mark next to it, but I think it's a good community to have a high school trap shoot. I think it's a good community to allow the police officers to do their weapons qualifications. I think those are good things to do. The Christmas bazaar, that's very well attended.
I'd just like to say that there's nothing on this list, maybe with the exception of the one that Tom pointed out, the kayak fishing tournaments, that raise a red flag for me. I mean, we have to be good stewards for the community, and the community is not just Bella Vista.
And a lot of our property owners want that variety. They want things to do.
If we take these things away, we are reducing the amount of amenity events that we provide to the property owners. So, and I mean, I just can't see limiting or getting rid of the charitable events. I mean, again, that gets back to, you know, we have to be good stewards.
Sandy?
Again, as I stated at the work session, I do think there's a huge difference between a cancer challenge shoot and 5 to 6 events, the fishing tournament, especially if you are correct, Mr. Brandenburg, when you said that they like to come in for a whole month before the tournament and use the lakes. I've had a lot of people tell me that they're very upset over even the thought of us opening up our lakes. And I think with the 2020 plan, even though we have done all of these things in the past, there may be some that we do need to change. And there are other ways that we can raise money for cancer research.
Jerry Holber?
I guess we're in the discussion phase, are we?
Yes, we are.
I have 4 questions that I would like to ask. I can ask them one at a time.
Okay.
Give someone else to talk or whatever. These questions come from a multitude of people, not just myself, and I've summarized them down to the gist of what was being asked. And basically, it's been noted that several of the events for 2020 were discussed at various committee meetings, but not listed on an agenda. Under 304, will this practice continue to be part of somebody's report, or will it be listed as an agenda item to speak about?
You brought that up last week, and I think that's a very valid point. I think we need to make sure. One thing that we talked about is bring these up in January, months beforehand. That way, the committees can review them. If the board does not like any decision that the committee has made, that they could potentially overrule it, but they have to be on the agenda so that our community is aware. So I would completely agree that in my opinion, if this change were to go through, then the board is given management a clear directive. Make sure it's on the January agenda of these respective committees, and make sure it's on the agenda.
Okay, the next one, it's been noted that some of the events are listed as a single event, but in reality, there are 5 or 6 events. And as an example, the kayak fishing occurs multiple times during the summer. And I guess it's a method of how you define an event, whether or not, if they meet every so many times a year as one event. I kind of think personally that they're separate events. They're not always the same people. It's not always the same rules for the specific tournament. Another one is the ATA events. Many of those are multiple days, multiple times throughout the years. It seems like these are all listed as when the range is closed. How many people would we have if the range was open that day and not have the event? Those are questions I think that need to be answered a little bit.
Well, do you mind if I jump in? So on this list, what I included is the number of instances and whether it's a 1-day event, a 2-day event. I tried to provide you with as much information as possible. Regarding the ATA, the trap and skeet fields are traditionally not open on Sundays. And that's why that's the main reason why we hold the ATA shoots on those days, so there's no disruption. Is it possible that at some point in the future, we need to look at the number of days that the range is open and potentially open it up for more days? That's absolutely open-minded to that.
Okay, most of these events, they occur on a single day or 2 days, but yet there are practice sessions that occur throughout the entire summer. Now, does that, because they come in and they say, I'm practicing for this event, does that allow them the access?
It is limited to this.
Pardon?
It is limited to these days, these events.
Okay, that, to me, it brings up quite a problematic situation then. Because they want to come in and they practice, but they can't do that because they're not a member and they're not a participant at that point. So, I don't know. It's just something that to me needs to be worked out a little bit better. Most of the charity events, the police event, those things, most people don't have any problem with any of those. Okay, but they do have some problem with events that charge people to be part of that event and POA not receiving any kind of income for the use of their facilities. But yet someone gets money. Why do we allow that?
Well, some of these events we do make money on. We actually, the POA makes money on the Cancer Challenge. They pay a use fee. The bazaars we charge for table rentals. So there's several of these that the POA does make money off of.
Okay, it's been reported to me that the kayak fishing tournaments in particular, one event gave the location that it was held at some $22,000 for that one-day event. Are we missing something?
And that's one of the events, that's the event that I've specifically pointed out that I think has a big question mark next to it.
Okay. We talk about the kayak fishing tournaments, but there's many other fishing tournaments, not just kayak ones. You didn't list those.
Are those open to non-members, Jerry?
Most of the tournaments are open to anybody. Not just, I mean, as far as, and some of them require to be open to the general public across the state. So there are a number of tournaments that are held that are strictly members only, and they may only be 5 or 6 people in them or something. But in those, I don't see those being as a special event personally.
Jerry, I think that probably any time that we have a fishing tournament on our lakes, any non-member would have to register as watercraft with the POA in order to get it on the water, or they get. You saw the numbers that the Rangers are removing a large number of people who don't belong here. So if they were having a tournament and their boats were out there, they'd be asked to leave and they'd just be out of the tournament. And, you know, in talking with Rick Eccles, he likes the kayak tournaments much more than he does the other ones because they measure the fish, take a picture, and return it to the water immediately. So it's very, very low impact on the lake and our fisheries. And the fish are put back for our members are able to catch them again. So the kayak events are very low impact. but they have to register their craft also to get on the water. So, it's something to look at in the future.
I've got one last question
Yep.
that's been asked to me. That is concealed carry. That's not listed as a special event. So are we not having that, or is it restricted to members only and their guests?
Members only.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one question. These fishing tournaments, is that under the Lakes Committee or under the Rec Committee?
Sandy?
Tom, at the March, one of the March committee meetings, you were giving examples of some things that could potentially be a problem, so they were aware of this back in March. One of the things you mentioned was 75 members of the Sportsman's Club that are non-members. Has that been handled?
That has not been addressed at this time. They're still not members.
And how would this change in this policy affect that?
Those individuals Sorry. Those individuals would be able to participate in the ATA shoots, but they wouldn't be able to practice.
David, I'd like to make a motion that we table 3.04, kick it back to R&R. There's essentially, well, mostly a new, I'm not done. There's mostly a new R&R committee, Jerry and myself. I'd like a chance to talk this over with Jerry and Tia.
You understand that if you table this, it will be the end of the season before we have a chance to give any direction to our employees, our lake rangers, and it's going to be the old rules.
I know.
I'm of the opinion that policy 3.04 is a step in the right direction, and we need to approve it. Nothing is to stop rules and regulations from addressing it immediately.
That's true.
And you can start work on it, but
We need something out there.
it's my position
Yeah.
that we need to move this
Rescind my
along.
motion.
And I do have two things
And-
already that should probably go to rules and regs
Yeah.
as soon as this, if it passes.
Then I make a motion that.
You gonna rescind
we-
your motion?
Yeah, and I change it.
Could you do that?
Technically, you need to vote on the motion since it's been seconded already.
You didn't get a second, so.
No.
Yeah,
said it is.
Sandy
You
seconded.
didn't let her second you.
Yeah.
Okay, make sure we do this right, Doug.
Yeah, you need to call for a vote on the motion to table.
Call for a motion on the vote to table. Okay, if you vote in favor of the motion to table, we're off for a couple of months before anything happens. If you vote against the motion to table, we will then have a motion to approve this, and we can get it in place, and we can start work on it immediately. So, that being said, all in favor of tabling 3.04, please raise your hand. 2, against tabling? 6. Okay, it is not tabled. Now, I need a motion to approve the changes to policy.
Do we want to add to this motion that the R&R will start working on?
You can do that after we,
Okay.
Yeah, I recommend that as a directive afterwards as opposed to
Yeah.
a portion of the motion.
so who will make the motion to approve? Tia?
I make a motion to approve the changes to policy 3.04 as recommended by the Rules and Regulations Committee, with this being the second of 2 required readings.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Jerry Barron. Is there any further discussion on this? In that case, we're going to call for a vote to approve policy 3.04, the changes, the second reading. All those in favor? 6. Opposed? 2. Thank you. I believe that brings...
Would this be the appropriate time to do some kind of directive to?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
The board, yeah.
I believe the chair can ask the rules and regs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Tia?
Will you do it?
You understand what we're asking you to do.
Absolutely. We will go back as a Rules and Regs Committee and look at 3.04.
Look at
any additions,
3.04
modifications.
and see if there are any changes that are warranted, necessary, but we're going to get what we've got in position for our people starting tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other new business?
Did you raise your hand? Oh.
Tia?
When it comes to these special events memo, can we do some kind of directive again that anything that has not happened yet this year, can they be discussed at the committee meetings going forward? Because there are a lot of questions. We still have a lot of questions, and I would like them to be discussed at the committees to understand who are the members, how many members, are they profitable? If we don't do it, is there a member that still would sponsor it anyway? I mean, those are the kind of discussions we need to have going forward. We can't change the past, but now that 3.04 is in place, can we start now looking at every event in the committees?
Absolutely. And one of the other suggestions that was brought up at the work session was to have, at the same time that we do committee training, which will take place in August, we will also have training regarding this new policy and the expectations of the board regarding this new policy and how the board expects it to be on the agenda in January so that it can be discussed and potentially voted upon at that time.
I have one comment. As you look over this memo, the special events, and you look at them, you quickly realize that these are not events that happen overnight. They take extensive planning a year or more in advance. So it's not something that just pops up and catches us by surprise. We know these things are coming, and myself, I believe that this brings a lot of goodwill to the village, and I would like to see just about all of these events continue. So, yes, Mary.
I did say, there's only one on there that I question, the rest of them I have absolutely no problem with because of the rules and the fact that it's a value add for most of them.
They make this a pretty good place to live. There's so much going on that you can find something to do. Okay, then, we have the announcements. The Board of Directors GM meeting Monday, next Monday, June 29th, 4:30 p.m. in the boardroom at the Country Club. It's a closed meeting. The Board of Directors GM meeting Tuesday, July 7th. Change of date, Tuesday, not Thursday. 4:30 p.m. in the boardroom at the Country Club. Closed meeting. Board of Directors work session Thursday, July 16th, at 9:00 a.m. in the boardroom at the Country Club. Board of Directors regular monthly session Thursday, July 23rd, 6 p.m. in the boardroom at the Country Club. If there are no further items, we stand adjourned.
Tia, you'll let us know when you want
Thank you.
to meet.